Firstly,
there you go.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, over to you, John.
I wondered how they got Mickey Mouse to say that. Thank you all for attending. I hope a few more will appear in the next few minutes. But the subject for this evening is missent. Now, anyone who attends the actual physical meetings of this group will know full well one of the real challenges is finding the subject for the following meeting. We picked on missent, some with misgivings, me included, but I'm pleased to announce that a number of people have actually found very, very specific items with missent upon them, and they're to be congratulated. Indeed, our first presentation from Graham Haywood really fits that bill. But others, and the one that follows, Graham Plaws that follows, is much more a redirected mail. And there are a variety of other approaches to the idea of being missent. In other words, not having a straightforward postal trajectory from point A to point B. So I think it's a wide-ranging group, a set of subjects, and I'm sure we'll all enjoy it. So if I could call on Graham Haywood to kick off, and Frank will run through the slides.
Okay. All right, the first one is of course, the missent marks went back before the introduction of postage stamps. So some of the early postal history items have missent marks. And this is an 1821 mark from Manchester. Quite a few of the English towns had these oval shaped ones, but they all varied in size. So this is quite a large one. And this is one that was sent from Scotland to Oundle in Northamptonshire, but it went to Manchester on the way. And there's a Glasgow date stamp very prominent below the missent mark of Manchester. Okay, Frank. Now, Manchester again had a very unusual one. This was a little curved missent to mark, which they combined with the normal date stamp and pretty accurately stamped the two separate stamps by the looks, unless they had some means of joining the two together, I don't know. But as far as I'm aware, no other place in England had a similar stamp to this. But and in fact, when I got it in England some years ago, but they thought that it was possible, it was commented it was probably unrecorded. But in fact, I discovered that Mackay, in his book of English postmarks, had got a record of it. So obviously some others have been seen, unless this is the one that was seen by Mackay. So this particular cover was sent from London to Lancaster, went to Manchester on the way. Okay. Now this mark is sent to Birmingham. It had an oval mark there, which is sometimes recorded in black and sometimes recorded in red. And this particular cover went from Liverpool to Hillsborough Island, but went to Birmingham on the way. Another notable thing about this cover is that it's 14th of May 1840, which makes it a May date, only 8 days after the introduction of postage stamps. So it's a historical cover from that aspect. And as far as I'm aware, it's not recorded in the book May dates. So I think it's an additional one to what was previously recorded. Okay, thanks, Frank. A lot of places had unique missent stamps. This is one that Burnley had, which was recorded as being used only for a relatively short time, and probably a local manufacture. But interestingly, they also had a unique too late stamp, which I've put on the bottom there. So it looks like they were fond of using blue cancels and obviously fond of getting their stamps made locally. So this cover went from London, went initially to Burnley and was redirected to Blackburn. And got some manuscript note there, which I think that's meant to sort of say it was sent this day, May the 6th, 1848. Okay, Frank. This was sent to a railway post office. Things often get put onto the wrong TPO, I think, is what usually leads to this sort of missent stamp. But a lot of the railway post offices have their own missent stamp. So this was a cover from the delightfully named Ashby de la Zouche, which and it was meant to go to Leek in Staffordshire, but and they probably got mixed up between Newcastle on Tyne and Newcastle Staffordshire as the cause for this one being misdirected. Okay, Frank. Now this one, this is a talk about maximising the distance for over this was intended to be sent from somewhere that was only about a mile from where it was posted, but it went via Bombay, which I think is a pretty good misdirection. It even got a Mal de Rige somewhere, which I think might be an Indian mark, but could of course be French because it's a French for misdirected. So I thought that's quite an interesting example of missent, or a genuine example of missent. Okay. And we've
And it's up
jumped.
to Mr. Plaw.
You missed my last one, so we'll go on to the next one.
No, that's all you sent, Graham.
I sent 6, but you had 6 down, and that's only 5.
Oh, well, I apologise in that case. I will check. I thought I had all of the 6 there.
The other one was a Worcester one, actually. It was missent to where was it? Yes, it was.
It's not further on, Frank. If it's not come up now, it's not there.
It was actually one that was locally posted in Worcester, and it ended up going to Spain.
Right. Well, I hope we'll enjoy that a little later.
Can I apologise to Graham for missing one, and I shall go back and check that out. But can I congratulate him on being so successful in hitting the missent right on the nail? So
Definitely,
well done, Graham, and some lovely material, including that Penny Black. So that's lovely. Graham,
Yeah, I agree with that, Graham. They were wonderful. I've stretched the missent to redirected on most of my presentation, except that I do have a missent one to finish with to make sure that I conform to the rules. This first one is a person during World War II who I knew. He, in fact, gave me this envelope some 2 or 3 years before he passed away. It was sent from Hawthorne by his mother and sent off to hopefully find the 21st Australian Tank Attack Battalion, and on the 5th of September of 44. It went some 16 different moves before it finally had a note attached on the lower left-hand corner, Ward 9 of the General Hospital in Heidelberg. And as a result of that, I asked him the question. He says, yes, I was sent down there on a couple of occasions because I had malaria. And the sequence of events, I won't read them out, but they went all over New Guinea from Lae, back to headquarters, went back to Townsville, went back to, again, to Papua New Guinea on 2 or 3 occasions, then finally to Sydney, and ultimately ended up where it belonged on the 5th of September, the 13th of November after a 5 September departure. So the message did get through in the end. Next one, Frank. Just while he's doing that, the Hawthorne registration mark at the top was interesting because it was just a strip off the bottom of a stamp sheet, because they didn't have any printed versions available at the time. I'm going to talk to our friend about that at some stage of the game. It's not in his book like that, I don't think. The next.
Oh.
Oops, where have you gone? Oh, you missed one, Frank, I think. That's it. Thank you. This one is one again from not Hawthorn West, but Hawthorn itself in 1968, and was sent to Delhi in India. It was an unclaimed version where it went all over the place in India. It went to Amritsar and then back to Bombay to their return letter office. They couldn't find anybody in their post office service that was by that name. They dispatched it the same day to Madras. They didn't know of anybody like that. So they then ultimately sent it back to Australia on the 13th of February 69 after a 13 November 68 departure. And the dead letter office just finally opened it and returned it opened with the return address on the back. Next one. Now this one was a registered letter sent from Coolangatta on 27th December 55 to Gisborne in Victoria. And because it had Mentone on it, it was sent directly to Mentone, but they quickly said unclaimed and then shot it straight back the same day to the registration office in Melbourne, where it was marked and then ultimately sent back to Mentone. They still put another unclaimed mark on it and then sent it to the dead letter office. And ultimately that went back from the dead letter office back to where it belonged on the 7th of January after a 27th of December departure. The interesting thing is that there's a Commonwealth Bank Camberwell written on there as well, and there's no evidence that was ever sent to Camberwell, but I wonder and think perhaps that was written by the person after it was received back. They probably found out it was at the Commonwealth Bank in Camberwell and just wrote that message on it for the record, I suppose, but I don't know that. Next. This one, quite a messy cover in its own little way, but it was sent on to Nilluquin in New South Wales, 23rd September 54. It came to Melbourne, and it's interesting that it looks like an address of a property in Melbourne Road, Melbourne. Now that's not easy to find. That's a big road. And obviously what happened is that the post office couldn't find anybody there either. So they sent it on to Yarraville, which is nearby. Nobody at Yarraville could find it, so they sent it off to Newport. That's also nearby and couldn't find anything. Then it was sent to Williamstown, also nearby. Ultimately, they gave up and sent it back to Elizabeth Street in Melbourne. It was then sent to the dead letter office. At one point on the journey, somebody put the mark on it that said, this message has been delayed, and it suggested that when it gets back that you ask the sender to perhaps use the correct address in future. And it came back to Denilton on the 5th of October after leaving on the 23rd of September. So that had a nice little journey around the place and got nowhere. Thanks, Brett. I just put this in for fun. Received this one from the same chap who gave me the first cover. He had this sent to him, and it was from Bamborough in Castle in Northumberland with a nice little message on the front. But the Royal Mail decided to say that because it had insufficient mail, it had to go by an alternative route because it covered up the entire castle that you're supposed to look at on the postcard. So I thought that was pretty generous of them to do that. So that's in there for fun. Thanks. The next one. This is the only actual misdirected one that I've got. It was sent to me from a friend that I could, within walking distance of my place when I lived in my old home, but I'd moved from Nunawading to Vermont, which is only a 7-kilometre distance apart, both in the same community as well. But it ended up leaving Nunawading and going all the way to Rockhampton in Queensland, some 2,000 odd kilometres kilometres away, and then they didn't like it and said it's not our responsibility to send it all the way back. And I finally got it back home in Vermont again after a long journey for 60 cents. So that's my lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Graham. That's I've enjoyed the shilling and a halfpenny stamp, because I don't think they're too easy to find on cover either. So that's a premium on all of that. But I thought we'd see a few, the fickle finger of fate, postal fate on a few of the covers, and we saw, I think, 3 in your examples there. So thank you for that. And we move on to Edward Brentnell, please. Edward.
Edward.
Can't hear you, Edward. Can't hear you. Is Edward muted?
Yeah, he's muted himself.
Can you unmute yourself, Edward?
That better?
That's better.
Good.
Off you go.
Oh well, just 3 things. This is they're all pieces. This is postage needed to London, which isn't quite missent, but it's close enough, I hope.
Next one.
Now, next one. How do I get the next one?
No, you don't need to worry
I'll
about
do that.
It's up.
Yep. And then there are 2. Why Greenock had such problems, but there were 2 of them missent to Greenock. So they're nice and clear, but they're not very remarkable.
You want to show the next one, I think, Frank?
Yep.
That's it.
That's the other one. Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. We then go to Tim.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I've moved recently from New South Wales, and a lot of my stuff I still haven't been able to find. And that included, I think, the only 2 missents I've got. Also, one which travelled rather a long way out of the way, which I'll mention, was from London to Norfolk, and it went through Kangaroo Point, which I was looking for, and I just can't find it because I haven't got into all the boxes yet. But anyway, coming on, so I had then to look at things which are really misdirected or are, where the post office is searching for people. This is one back in the 1840s where it was sent from Bromley in Kent to one of the people with the Light 99th Regiment. And it was interesting that the way they addressed it was New South Wales or elsewhere. And I could understand that because the Light 99th, as you see at the bottom, actually served in Tasmania, went up to Moreton Bay for the convicts, and then went across to the Maori Wars in New Zealand. But it was interesting that when it got to New South Wales, someone had then very kindly written on Moreton Bay and sent it up to them. So that is, it also has quite a nice packet mail manuscript on it. Okay, yeah.
Hang on. Stop going.
Okay.
Is that it? There you go.
Oh, here we are. Yeah. Now this again is going into Moreton Bay. This one, of course, from Victoria, and it was, as you see, sent to Drayton, which was really the central hub in Moreton Bay once you got inland and up to the Darling Downs, were much earlier than when Toowoomba took over. And when it got there, it was sent on to Taroom, which is something over 300 kilometers northwest of Toowoomba, and they obviously had to pay tuppence to do that. But then it was again redirected somewhere to Meriboo. Now, Meriboo I have never come across in my Moreton Bay. I would suspect it might be a property, and therefore I don't know whether it was charged to go to Taroom, but it was actually sent to the property from Drayton, or whether it went on to Taroom and was then redirected from there. So I can't tell from that. But the other thing was on the markings on the back, it actually went through Dalby on Christmas Day where it was stamped. You don't get that nowadays. Okay then, Paul, Frank. Now we come to a couple of things which are really these like redirected ones. Both of them are New Zealand covers, and this one here has one or two interesting markings you may be able to read. That at the top is the deceased crossed out, and at the bottom left is missing believed deceased. It also has the fickle finger of fate on it, and it went from New Zealand, it went up to Noumea, New Caledonia. It was then redirected to Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea. Then it was returned to Wellington, and then it was sent back once to the sender in Auckland. So that had quite a good travel round. Okay, Frank? Yeah, this is another one of the New Zealand ones. And you'll see it went from Rotorua to Auckland, where it had the manuscript unknown, and then the returned, and it's got unclaimed on it. It also was opened by the post office to see where it had come from when it couldn't find where to send it. And there was an officially sealed label put across the top and over the back. You can see part of it. But if you can see the actual slogan, which is there, asks you to address mail fully and clearly. And this one obviously didn't abide the slogan, which was on the letter itself. But just another little one about trying to find things that the post office does. All right, Frank, that's it, I think, today.
Thank you, Tim. Alan Shatton, please.
Yes. So I've got a few misdirected ones. Well, sorry, redirected ones. This is a letter that was sent from Launceston. It's been all over the northern part of Tasmania. It went to Exeter, Sidmouth, Beaconsfield, and ended up in the dead letter office. It's got a nice fickle finger. It's got a cannot be found mark, which is rated 4R. And it's got a multi-box hand stamp for postman's notes. And there's a guy named Dr. Patrick Reed who wrote a book on Tasmanian instructional markings, and he assures me that this is the third known copy of that particular postman's notes mark. This is quite a good cover. Thanks, Frank. This one is also a redirected cover. We think that the tuppence to pay is because the stamp is on the wrong side of the postcard. The stamp was supposed to be on the right-hand side of the postcard, and the postmaster at Evandale Junction, from where it was posted, is known to be pretty fierce. So we think that he let the tuppenny to pay because it was the stamp was in the wrong place, not because it had to be redirected. Thanks, Frank. This is just a cute little card. It's It's from Reggie to Miss Kitty Hutchinson, who had left Longford and had taken up residence at the rectory in Hamilton. And Reggie's handwriting is very simple. Thanks, Frank. I think I've showed this one before, but it's an undelivered letter to Matthew Templeton Esquire. Even though it was endorsed at the top, please forward this letter without delay to some company in Axminster. And it was undelivered in England, marked not known, and returned to Tasmania via the return letter office in London. And the final destination is the dead letter office in Hobart, which is a AA rating. And this is 7 years earlier than the previous recorded earliest date for the dead letter office. Thank you. This is insufficiently addressed. I think this is a real good example of an insufficiently addressed envelope. I'll let it speak for itself. Thank you. This one was sent from Melbourne to Falkland. It was unclaimed. It's got a reason unclaimed hand stamp, one of many, many types. And it's got an unclaimed return to sender with fickle fingers. The unclaimed hand stamp is probably the most interesting feature of it. That's me. Thank you.
Alan, I couldn't resist it, and I'm surprised that you could to make the comment about the morning cover ending up in the dead letter office. It struck me as singly appropriate. Ian, I think, is with us now. We can't see him, but he supposedly is there. So, Ian, over to you. We're missing your elephants. Can't hear you, Ian. Oh.
Try your mute button, Ian.
No, I was unmuted before and someone muted it. Never mind. Good morning, everybody. Just a couple of items this morning. A very sort of tatty first item, John, please. Yeah. It's only a slip of newspaper, but it's originally sent from Brighton to Hamilton on Forth in Tasmania. Unfortunately, it got sent to Scotland, where it has Hamilton and Scotland crossed out and redirected back to Tasmania with a Hamilton postmark. As Brian very kindly pointed out the other day, it's done about 2,500 miles for a halfpenny. And I think those that know this sort of material will know that it's part of the Smith correspondence. But I think that's probably the most extreme misdirected you can get, I think.
25,000 miles.
Yeah, I was going to say
35,000. I beg your pardon. Sorry. Yes, indeed. You're quite right, Brian. Sorry, I'm misquoting you totally. I'm glad you're here to correct me. Fine. So that's that item. And the second one is a redirected item. It's an item that was sent from Cape of Good Hope. It has a pair of fourpenny Perkins Bacon Cape triangles on, doing the 8 rate to Victoria, originally addressed to Melbourne, and then redirected to Kilmore. There is some other correspondence, I think 1 or 2 items or 1.5 items with this, and it's fairly clear that the gentleman involved was out gold prospecting, I think, in Kilmore. When it arrived in Melbourne, you'll see that it had 2 Queen on Throne stamps stuck over the top of the Cape triangles, and that was the payment for redirecting. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you very much, John. Thank you.
okay, and I trust my fiddling around with your visuals was not too distressing, Ian.
No, it threw me to start with, but thank you very much for doing it.
That's not a problem. Alan Gray, I think, have I seen Alan?
I don't think I've seen Alan.
Well, let's just, here's a missent. I think I'll give everyone just time to read the text. I've seen Alan today because he was at Purvis House this morning with his delightful wife entering up stuff from the library. So anyway, I think I just leave it for people to read the text, and after a reasonable time, Frank will move on to the next one.
Yep.
But Japan to British Guinea, that's not easy. 1910.
No.
That's
Okay.
not easy either.
No.
No. Now, I apologise for the fact the text is on askew, but with the way Alan presented it, I had the choice of either levelling the cover up or levelling the text up. I thought the cover was more important. Another Japan. And I received that chopped off, so don't blame me for that one. Okay, last but not least is yours truly, who probably has taken even more liberties with the title missent than anyone, and this probably features in one of my favourite items, the category rather than the missent, but it's missent in the sense that the original intention was in January of 1816 to send this on a very short period of time packet letter service that was going to India. So originally it was rated at 3 and 6 on the 5th of January, but for a reason it either missed that the packet, or it was decided the packet was not stopping in Mauritius. So it was eventually sent by an India ship letter in April. And because the ship letters were rated at 1/3 the charge of the packet letter, the eventual rate was 1 and 2. It's an interesting piece of philatelistry, having the 2 marks, and Tabbitt rates the marks as scarce to difficult. But it also is an interesting piece of social history. It's from the agent in Whitehall to the chief of the army in 1816. The Brits had taken over Mauritius in 1810. It didn't actually pass across to them till 1815, but they were well ensconced on Mauritius, and it's telling him what's happening in the regiments and who's got what posts, etc., etc. So I find it's an interesting item, but has 2 interesting marks, and I think the packet letter mark, which is probably the rarer of the 2, undoubtedly the rarer of the 2 marks, is a very nice clean cancel. Okay, Frank, thank you. Mauritius, sorry, a big pardon, Mauritius, but Victoria, block of 4. Interesting enough, playing because it's all within Melbourne, playing 8pence for up to 2 ounces. That worries me a little bit, but it's got a good Royal of London certificate, but advertised and unclaimed with a letter carrier mark at the top right. Unfortunately, some staining on the left-hand side, but blocks of 4 of the Queen on Throne are not too often found. So it's an interesting item from that side, but it's really the advertised and unclaimed and the letter carrier marks that really make that particularly interesting, as well as the block of 4. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Thank you, Frank. Unclaimed at Sandridge. Probably not. I don't think it's a particularly rare mark, but Ian will probably confirm that. But I quite like it. You can't see it too clearly, but it's marked on the left-hand side, not known my portion, and signed off by 3 postmen. So there were 3 postmen, one assumes, looking at covering the area of Sandridge. And the It's an interesting cover. It's from the Jewish Orphan and Neglected Children's Aid Society. The president has resigned, and there's a vote for the incoming one. I wonder the name, which is quite hard to read, Schumer in Sandridge, really missed not receiving this particular card. Next one, thank you, Frank. We now go to Nyasaland, or in this time of period, British Central Africa. The card was actually written in Chindi, which is at the mouth of the Zambezi, but Chindi was a concession from the Portuguese. So the Brits, or Cecil Rhodes British South Africa Company, more accurately, could have a base for moving cargo up the Zambezi and then subsequently up the river towards the centre of British Central Africa. So this was said to be from the Portuguese East Africa, but had gone into the British system to send this particular letter. Interesting enough, uses an internal postcard, so that's incorrect in that particular sense. And it had to be uprated by the addition of a penny. Uprated internal cards, not too often found. Went on the Deutsche East Africa line, the Bundesrat via Zanzibar, addressed to Chemnitz in Saxony, and then readdressed to Floha, which is an outer suburb of Chemnitz. So not a large movement away from its original intention, but I think an interesting card with the German shipping line mark on it. And they were one of the major sources of picking up mail in Chindi. Typically, they went variously north or south from there, around the Cape or up through the canal, carrying mail to Europe. So it was an important part. And there was a lot of relationships between German East Africa and British Central Africa, stroke Nyasaland, as it then became. So the last one, I think, thank you, Frank. No, not the last, this is the penultimate one. This is World War I period, from the Belgian troops who'd gone into Germany, East Africa. And its SM is Service Militaire, registration etiquette, which is quite nice with the manuscript mark for his particular battalion, addressed to Calais. Now this is 1917. July 1917 was the third and last major campaign at Ypres, which was very, very close to Calais. So one assumed that the young lady, I assume she's a young lady, Mademoiselle Jane Glade, had moved, and she had moved south. So to where you is on the coast, quite a bit further south and pretty well away from the centre of action. But I think it's quite a nice item. I'm a little bit interested as to why he inverted the second of the overprinted stamps. People didn't often do it at that time, but there were codes between people as to how they gave messages to people. So one wonders whether it was an oversight, or bear in mind this is wartime. So he's in the middle of German East Africa. So one can forgive him for not looking too carefully as to which direction his stamp pointed. And last is a somewhat later cover, Frank. 1915, from Limby in Nyasaland going to Sweden, which is not a particularly common item. I quite like this one because I like registered mail. 4p was the registration rate. 3p, the best I can find, because Proud goes very, very quiet around this period onto postal rates, was that it should have been 2p halfpenny, but wartime 3p halfpenny, what's the difference? The interesting thing is it's from the Sherry Highlands Railway, the letter, and there were two main lines that were open. One was the railway line to Port Herald, which is south on the way down towards Chindi on the coast. That was the first line that was built in 1909. But then in May 1915, 1 month after this letter, the official line from Port Herald to Chindi was opened. Now, if you look at the time, Port Herald to Chindi is quite a distance. I don't think it would have been done in 3 or 4 days by foot, which was the most typical, and running it down the river in the Zambezi, it certainly would not have been done. So one wonders whether this was an advanced usage of that second segment of the railway line. I presume it was travelled by the Cape, because certainly they wouldn't have been using the German East Africa line at that particular time in 1915. It went to Linköping, pronunciation I'm sure is wrong, but then, which is in central Sweden, and was forwarded to Stockholm. I tried to find Linköping on a map of Sweden, but all I could find was an awful lot of lakes. And that's all from me, and all indeed from the total presentation. So I don't know how you've gone, Frank, in terms of questions, whether you have many.
I've got none.
None.
None. So
I know we're good, but we're not.
Can we have some questions or comments, please?
I'd like to make a comment to Ian, if I could. I think one of the problems with your letter to Hamilton in Tasmania on the 4th is that Hamilton isn't on the Forth River. It's near the Derwent River, but it isn't on the Forth River. And I don't know if there is a Forth River in Tasmania.
There you go, Ian.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not quite sure what's happening this morning. It seems to automatically mute itself. Is that you, Frank? Or
No, I don't touch it.
No.
Okay.
We automatically mute POMs, so it's part of the system.
Thank you, John.
Any other comments, questions? Well, we've done it very, very promptly, which is either a good sign or a bad sign. I don't know which, but
Can I also comment? I thought Graham Haywood's selection of covers was excellent. And they're the only one that really met the subject, which is to be applauded.
Yeah, he gets the elephant stamp.
Yeah, no, but there were Alan McGray who didn't present, but he had some actual missent marks on his. So one would have to give him a pat. But I agree that Graham's material, as ever, is lovely. So,
Thank you.
well, possibly then all I can do is
There's one comment, John. Excuse me. Sorry.
Yep.
Peter Lotharian said there is a Forth River in Tasmania, close to Devonport. Forth is a small town.
But it's nowhere near Hamilton. Nowhere near it.
That's Peter Lothian, and I'm glad he's there participating. Good to see you, Peter. I didn't see you there for a moment. Okay, well, anything else before we close? Before I kick into touch the key question, I don't suggest we, on a Zoom session, try to pick the subject for the next meeting, but suggestions to me by email would be welcome. So I think that's probably a more effective way of doing it. But all that remains is to thank the presenters, thank those who have participated early in the morning in the UK, and thank all those that have attended. So thank you very much indeed, and I hope you've enjoyed the evening. And a question of you, actually, no, can I throw this one in? We have planned a second Zoom meeting later in the year on the basis that last year, when we had no option, they were popular, and we had one or two people from the UK and an occasion from the US. Do people want to have the second one, or don't they?
Yes, please.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Yes.
Yes.
I see thumbs up. Is that a general opinion?
Yeah, I think they're all saying. I think they're all saying yes, John.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, typically, if we get 10 people to the actual 10 or 12 to the participatory meeting, and we've certainly got more tonight than we would normally have. So that's a bonus, and getting more and more people participating is clearly an objective. So thank you all for participating, for producing material for the showing, and your subjects by email would be very much welcome. Thank you all, and thank you, Frank, for your coordination and as ever, and reading the riot act to everybody at the beginning.
No worries. All right, thank you, everybody. Good night, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Good.